today we're getting more to the heart space. And as Sapna mentioned, it's the month of love. It's the month of Valentine's. And so we thought we'd explore this topic, the power of embracing love. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. I think perhaps, Sapna, someone has to turn their screen off. Are you sharing a screen or?
No, you can go ahead and share.
Okay, so I should share my screen. Okay. I hope you'll be able to see. Can you just let me know if you can see my presentation?
Yes.
You can. All right, wonderful. So thank you, everyone. So just to kind of give you a little bit of an orientation, I'll speak maybe for perhaps 30 to 40 minutes. I'll share some ideas with you, some insights from the ancient teachers on embracing the power of love. And then I'll be happy to open it up. Throughout the session, you're welcome to post your questions on the chat, and we'll try to respond to those at the end and have a little bit of a discussion to take the topic a little bit deeper into the heart. Embracing the power of love. It is the month of Valentine's, and it's very interesting that when you do some research on Valentine's Day and you try to find the origins of it, there are actually many different stories behind Valentine's Day. But perhaps the most prevailing and popular stories relate to the saints, different saints. There was one saint, a priest in Rome, another saint, a bishop in the Catholic Church, and there seem to be varying stories, but there was a historical saint named Valentine. And it said that this saint was someone who shunned power, profit, prestige, popularity. Saint Valentine was someone who lived as a celibate monk. And even when he was the object of violence, when he was threatened to be killed if he didn't stop preaching his message of love and sharing what was deep within his heart, he was threatened to be killed. But Saint Valentine, turning away from all material things and sharing that message of love, of spirituality within his heart, continued on. And he eventually became a religious martyr. He was killed for spreading his message of love. And February 14th marks the day that Saint Valentine died. And that is actually the origin of Valentine's Day. It's actually a commemoration of Saint Valentine. It's said that over time, what happened is that this story of this great saint who preached a message of love was kind of combined with something else that happens in February. As you all know, after a dark winter, February signifies the beginning of spring. Spring signifies regeneration. And that regeneration is very much characterized by this time of year being the mating season, the time when the birds and the bees come together. And February, therefore, very much marks this springtime, which is full of the coming together of the males and females in the natural kingdom to reproduce. And therefore, Saint Valentine and this story of a celibate monk who sacrificed his life kind of became combined with the February month of mating and romance. And therefore, these two things have almost come together now on Valentine's Day. And therefore, it's kind of a mix of sacrifice, selflessness, and a lot of romance and attraction and chemistry that really signifies Valentine's Day. But whichever one we meditate on, we can understand that love is the universal quest. Each one of us on this call, maybe when it comes to love, we're all in different spaces. Maybe some of us are looking for love. Maybe some of us have fallen in love. Maybe some of us find ourselves living with someone but not in love. Maybe some of us are experiencing the pain of love. And maybe some of us have lost the confidence or the hope that love even exists. And therefore, one way or the other, everyone has love on their mind. And it runs so deep within our consciousness. But what is love? I would like to begin by exploring all of that with you, because we talk so much about love in the world, but how specifically and how accurately have we defined love? If we don't know what love looks like, then we may mistake something else to be love. Love is actually very, very rare. And what we may consider to be love may just be to like someone. Once a student came to his teacher and asked, what's the difference between liking and loving? And what the student did, he was shown by the teacher. The teacher pointed to a beautiful flower. And he said, if you like the flower, then you'll go up to it, you'll pick it, you'll smell it, you'll enjoy it, and then once it loses its charm, you'll discard it. And then the teacher looked at the student and said, but if you love that flower, then what will happen is you'll go up to it, you'll water it, you'll nourish it, you'll protect it, you'll allow it to manifest its full beauty, its full fragrance. And in that way, you'll contribute to the life of the flower so that it can reveal its beauty to the world. And in that one story, we perhaps learn so much about the difference between liking and loving. We learn so much that many of our relationships, which we consider to be relationships of love, may be relationships which are more predominantly about liking. They say when you like someone, the focus is to see what you can get from them. But when you love someone, the focus is on giving, it's on sacrificing, it's on being selfless. When we like, our mindset, our meditation, our orientation internally within that relationship is a sense of expectation. Yet when there's a loving relationship, one already feels so invested in that there's a predominant mood of appreciation. It's not what more can this person give me, but it's how much this person has already given me. When we're liking, then we'll understand, because it will perhaps degrade our character, degrade our behavior, degrade us from living our highest aspirational values. Because liking is found in synonymous to enjoying, it can lead to a degradation of one's character. Yet when one loves, then one will see that their greatest qualities of tolerance, compassion, kindness, empathy, all of these beautiful qualities come out. When we like, our focus is on what the immediate result of that relationship is. Yet when we love, we see that relationship for its whole life cycle. And therefore we are much more patient, we are much more committed, we're much more willing to forgive and be tolerant, because we see that there's a longer journey here. When we like, ultimately that relationship will wither, but when we love, it will blossom. What we're trying to share with all of you today is not just something theoretical. We can take a framework like this and we can look at the different relationships we have, maybe a relationship with a partner, a relationship with a parent, a relationship with a friend or a child, a relationship with someone who we spend time with, someone who we consider companions on our journey of life. And we can begin to try to make this shift towards loving more than liking. Because nowadays people can't really, are struggling to establish deep relationships with each other. The US comedian Woody Allen, he said, me and my wife, we drive in separate cars, we live in separate rooms, we function doing different things at different times of the day, we have different friends. He said, we're doing everything we can to keep our relationship together. So there's almost a sense in which people can't really connect deeply. It seems when they come together, it's always a recipe for driving them further apart, because perhaps the quality of that interaction doesn't foster deeper love. And therefore, a framework like this can help us. They say in the world today now, every person usually goes through 3 huge relationship breakups in their life. And it's said that the average person will spend 1.5 years of their life recovering from broken relationships. It's said that 20% of men and 13% of ladies are unfaithful to their partner at some point in their life. Struggling with relationships. It's said that parents on average have about 2,000 arguments with their children within a calendar year. That's 5 a day. Because people don't know how to actually interact. And sometimes it's the simple principles which help us to reorientate ourselves. Let's look a little bit deeper into love. It's said that there can be different types of love. One type of love is a physical type of love where the bond between 2 people is very much based on physical exchange. That could be sensual gratification, or that can be the provision of various material facilities or material securities. Physical connections are based sometimes on familial bonds. This is a type of what we call physical love. And perhaps many of our relationships, they're founded upon physical love. Then we say there's emotional love. In this type of love, what bonds 2 people together is not just the physical exchange, but how they make each other feel. The kind of qualities that, or the kind of consciousness that's awakened within them when they're around that person. And often the physical and emotional, they kind of overlap. However, there is another type of aspect to love, which is a spiritual aspect. And we're not saying that physical and emotional love is bad. Physical and emotional love is very natural. It's very necessary. We're attracted by physicality. We appreciate the material and tangible exchange that happens in relationships. And we very much need that sense of emotional input from someone and that emotional resonance within us. However, the ancient teachers explained that if there is not simultaneously a deep spirituality to the relationship, a deep mood of sacrifice, a deep sense of giving in that relationship, then the physical and emotional can degrade and actually cause what we think to be love to degrade into lust. And therefore, you sometimes find people who come together on the physical and emotional level, experiencing love. Sometimes their relationships become highly damaging. In the name of love, people sometimes do the most shameless and self-destructive things. In the name of love, sometimes people can lose all their discrimination. They can suffer financially, they can suffer ethically, they can suffer socially. and ultimately they suffer spiritually. And therefore love can easily degrade and slide into destructive lust. And therefore the ancient teachers always encourage us to include and factor in a deep spirituality within the relationship. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that is. In maths of the world, we tell people 1 + 1 = 2. That is a principle that stands true everywhere. But in relational maths, we say the maths are slightly different. In the mathematics of relationship, 1 + 1 can equal 0. This is when a relationship is toxic. In the mathematics of relationships, 1 + 1 can also equal 1. And that is relationships which are transactional. And in the relationship mathematics that the Eastern teachers talk about, 1 + 1 can also equal infinity. That is transcendent or spiritual or divine relationships. Now, I want you to think about relationships you have in your life at present and ask yourself how many relationships are toxic, how many are transactional, and how many are transcendent. And how do you differentiate between these three types of relationships? It's very, very simple in one sense. The way you will be able to define where a relationship stands is, number one, ask yourself, what is my vision of the other person? Number two, ask yourself, what is the role that I play in their life? And number three, ask yourself, what is the goal of both of us coming together? In a toxic relationship, the vision we have of the person is that they exist to serve me. In a transactional relationship, the vision we have of someone is that they serve me and I serve them. Yet in a transcendent relationship, one feels so appreciative and captured by the other person that the predominant mood is I exist to serve this person, and they've already contributed so much to me that I don't need to expect anything from them. And in that transcendent relationship, the other person feels exactly the same, that they should serve you because you've already done so much for them. Now you can begin to see that transcendent relationships are very, very unique, but also incredibly powerful. The second thing that will differentiate what kind of relationship it is what is the role that you play in each other's lives. In a toxic relationship, the role that you play in that relationship is you're trying to take from that person and bring them down, to minimize them, to almost destroy them. Toxic relationships are relationships in which someone is so insecure that they're only looking to take and establish their superiority. In a transactional relationship, the role you play is to take from the other person, but also to give something back to help them. So it's a role of give and take. In transcendent relationships, we look at someone else and ask ourselves the question, how can we help this person be the best they can be in their life? We look to contribute, we look to uplift, we look to inspire, we look to empower. That is very, very amazing. And then the final thing you can ask in your relationships is, what is the goal? The goal in a toxic relationship is to overcome my own security. The goal in a transactional relationship is I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. But the goal in a transcendent relationship is that we grow together and we achieve something beautiful together. In other words, it's not that we're just coming together so you can be successful in your life and I can be successful in my life. No, that's transactional. In a transcendent relationship, we're looking to grow because we have a great success that we're meant to achieve together. And in this way, the ancient teachers of the East encourage us, when you do the audit of your relationships, if you find toxic relationships, learn to walk away, learn to let go, learn to give yourself some breathing space. When you identify transactional relationships, the teachers tell us, factor in more selflessness, factor in more sacrifice. Try to see if you can upgrade the quality of that relationship. And the teachers tell us, if you're lucky enough to find some transcendence in some of your relationships, then invest profusely in those relationships and make them stronger and richer and more substantial. And oftentimes what we do is we do the exact opposite. We neglect the relationships in which we're receiving so much, and we hold on and keep giving in relationships where we're actually coming together 1 + 1, 0, and destroying each other. And this is the irony of the world we live in, that when we know relational maths, then we can understand where to invest our time, energy, and effort so that we can find the greatest fulfillment in our relationships. And so these are some aspects for all of us to think about. Now, I'm going to end today by sharing with you something which is based on the ancient scriptures of the East, which talk about the life cycle that we go through within our life. And then I'm going to relate this back to love, and I think it will be powerful and useful as all of us begin to contemplate how can we engender deeper loving relationships within our life. So according to the ancient Sanskrit teachers, our life, if you calculated it to be 100 years long, then broadly speaking, the Eastern teachers say there are 4 phases to our life, each of 25 years. And each of those 4 phases are known as ashrams. For those of you familiar with Eastern or Indian spirituality, the word ashram generally means a monastery. But in a more conceptual sense, the word ashram means a place of learning, a place of elevation, a place of cultivation. And so in the Eastern concept of the life cycle, the first ashram was known as the brahmachari ashram. And this was the ashram which lasted from birth to 25 years. And the idea in this stage of life, the first 25 years, was to focus on learning. And therefore, students would go to a traditional teacher who would then help them in learning different aspects of character development, wisdom, knowledge, vision. The first 25 years is for learning. In the life cycle of the human, the Eastern teachers tell us the next 25 years of life is known as household life, grihasta in Sanskrit. And the household life is really a life of giving, because as you enter into marriage, as you have children, as you're meant to work and earn in the world, every day is about giving your time, giving your energy, giving your the best of yourself to others. And in this way, functioning in the world and achieving things. The third aspect of the life cycle that someone goes through between 50 and 75 is known as vanaprastha, and this is known as retired life. By this time in life, one's children have grown up, and one then enters into a phase of retirement in which they reflect back on their life and they digest all of the different experiences and emotions and events that they went through in their life. And then it said the final phase of life is known as sannyas, or renunciation. And this is where one would withdraw from material concerns and focus on higher pursuits to expand their consciousness and their awareness to higher things, knowing that their time in the material realm is now limited. Now, you may be wondering, what does all of this have to do with love? But if you closely look at these 4 stages of life and what each of the 4 ashrams are contributing to our development, then you'll see that each one of them are helping us to actually move towards a deeper sense of love in our life. And I'll explain how. The brahmachari ashram, or the student phase of life where we're learning, is the phase of life in which we're preparing for love. Dear friends, did you know that the beginning of finding love with someone else is to spend time in solitude? Just like when you go for a new job, the first thing you'll do before acting in that new job is spend some time in seclusion doing some online courses to prepare yourself for it. Or for example, before you drive a car, you have to learn, and you do that in a safe environment with a driving instructor in a very controlled environment. And therefore, the first stage in finding love in our life is to prepare for love. And the way we prepare for love is by first spending time alone. Most people, they're afraid of being alone because they feel being alone means being lonely. But being alone can also be seen as solitude, which is uplifting, empowering, nourishing, a period of time in which we can understand more about who we are, understand how to improve our character, understand what our internal triggers and emotional states are. Solitude helps us to become more self-aware. Most people fail in relationships because they haven't taken this stage of preparing for love by first understanding themselves. If we don't understand our own self, when we go into a relationship, we won't have any chance of really deeply understanding someone else. And if we don't understand someone else, how will we ever be able to relate to them in a deep way? And so interestingly, the first step in finding love is to actually move away and go inside first. Just like in the second phase of your life, one becomes a householder, and that's very much about giving. In the evolution of love, the next phase is that we enter into relationships and we practice love. Too often people think of love as an emotion, a feeling, but love is also an activity. Love is also a cultivation. We don't wait till we love someone to serve them. Rather, we begin serving them, and by serving them, the love develops. And therefore, in this stage of practicing love, we realize that when we're practicing love, there's a lot of giving. There's a lot of sacrificing. When we're giving and we're practicing love, then we take responsibility. We embody flexibility to the changing needs of the people around us. In this phase of practicing love, we realize that love is not just about chemistry, but it's about commitment. And therefore, the second stage in finding the deepest type of love is to just begin practicing love. In the third stage of life, where we generally withdraw from active life, withdraw from all our relationships in the world in that very involved way, this in the love cycle represents promoting love. What will happen in the course of our journey in life is that certain relationships may break. Certain relationships may become very distant. Certain relationships may encounter obstacles. Certain relationships may fade. And in this stage, when relationships sometimes don't go according to how we've expected them to go, this stage of life, or this stage of the love cycle, helps us to reflect deeply, to learn from what's happened, to digest experiences, to find lessons. Promoting our love is very much about looking at all the connections we've had and trying to become better people from all of those experiences. Promoting love is also about forgiveness and realizing that unless we let go of our negativity, our bitterness towards things that didn't go quite according to plan, unless we do that, we can't experience something higher. And it's said that when we go through these stages, then we can move to the stage of perfecting love. Because in the final stage of the love cycle, one has become so wise, one has become so giving, one has become so refined in their own sense of self and in giving to others, that what happens is their love reaches newer heights through all of that maturation process. In the sannyas stage of life, perfecting love, what happens is one's love is expanding. In the beginning, we were expecting love, but then we learned the art of expressing love. And as we expressed more and more love, then we began to experience expanding love. And therefore, when one perfects their love, then they realize they can experience love anywhere with anyone. In the beginning, our love is for a person. Later on, our love extends for a family. Later on, our love can expand for a community. Later on, our love can expand for humanity. Later on, our love can expand even for the natural creatures in the world. And later on, our love can even expand for Mother Earth. And like this, as one's consciousness deepens and one's heart becomes more and more open, then one experiences a perfection of love in which everything they do factors in emotions of love. And so I wanted to thank Jay Shetty in his book, 8 Rules of Love. He offers us this model based on the ancient Eastern wisdom texts of how we can actually go through the life cycle of becoming better at loving. And so as I come to my close, I'll open up in a few minutes for questions. So if you do have any questions, please put them on the chat or have them in your mind and we can ask them live. But just to recap today we began by talking about how most people are not aware of the difference between liking and loving. Many of the relationships we think are about love are maybe more about liking, and therefore we become frustrated, we become disappointed. We talked about how there's physical and emotional love, but there needs to be a deeper spiritual foundation. Otherwise, that physical and emotional love can often degrade into lust and destructive behaviors. We went on to talk about how there are relational mathematics that we should be aware of. 1 + 1 can equal 0 in a toxic relationship. 1 plus 1 can remain 1. We don't change, we don't develop, we don't really grow because it's just a transactional relationship. And we learned that there are a few unique relationships wherein 1 plus 1 can equal infinity, the transcendent relationships. And we learned that what differentiates these three is the vision, the role, and the goal of that relationship. And then we ended by talking about how in our own life cycle to become better at loving, we have to prepare for love by spending some time in solitude. We have to practice love even when we don't feel that overpouring emotion by constantly giving the best of ourselves in relationships. Later on, we have to promote our love by reflecting on all the things that have gone well and all the difficulties. And through that maturation process, we're able to perfect our love and experience expanding love to everything and everyone. And these were some thoughts I wanted to share with you on love. I hope some of it has resonated with you. I would encourage you to think about a relationship in which you'd like to develop more love, or a relationship in which you feel like you've lost the love, and perhaps see how some of the learnings and some of the points that we discussed today could relate to that relationship. I invite you to come next week, where we'll be going more into detail by discussing the school of love. And we'll try to give you 6 habits which you can employ in the way you interact with others that may help you to have deeper and more fulfilling relationships of love. So I'll pause there and say thank you very much for being with us. I hope that was of some benefit to you and could help. And I'm very happy to perhaps, Sapna, if you'd like to field some questions, I'd be very happy to try my best to respond.
First of all, my sincere gratitude to you, Swamiji, for gracing us with your presence and delivering such an exceptional talk. This is just a new perspective to the love that we have, like from here and there, that we listen usually. So thank you so much for such an engaging and inspiring talk. I would like to go over like questions over the chat. So please, I would request everyone to please type your questions or unmute yourself if there is any. Okay, so we got one from Gorish. Is walking away only the solution to toxic relationships? And what if walking away is not an option, like in relationship with one's own self?
Oh, thank you so much. Very, very wonderful question. So when we experience toxic relationships in which we feel ourselves coming down, is walking away the only option? Definitely not. The first thing we can do is perhaps take the help of a third party. When we find ourselves blocked in a relationship without much progression, then we can always try to involve a third party who can help to help each of us understand how better to communicate and connect with each other. So that's definitely something that you can try out in your relationship management. The second thing is that sometimes walking away may be too strong, but what you can do is give that relationship some breathing space. Sometimes you may have an appliance and it's not working. So sometimes there's no major solution required. All you have to do is turn it off, leave it off for a while, and then just turn it on again, and it all of a sudden seems to work. So sometimes relationships don't need you to walk away. They don't need you to also just stay there and grin and bear it. But what you may just want to consider is giving it some space, some breathing space, because sometimes that breathing space can kind of trigger an improvement. The third thing you mentioned, or one of the things you mentioned, was that what about if the toxic relationship is with yourself? And that's why I was really talking about the need to spend time in solitude. The ancient teachers explain how we spend time in solitude. Perhaps one of the reasons we don't spend time in solitude is we're not sure what we would do when we're by ourselves. But they give us many techniques of meditation, of spiritual wisdom study, many ways in which we can introspect and reflect, many ways in which we can begin to explore the inner world. And as we spend time in solitude, understanding ourselves better, becoming more self-aware, what are my emotional triggers? What are my strengths? In what situations do I strive? Then what happens is our relationship with ourselves becomes much better. Just as a relationship can't improve unless you spend time with someone, how can your relationship with yourself improve if you don't spend time with yourself? And that spending time with yourself is the practice of solitude, in which many, many different things can be done to uplift and empower oneself. So I hope that helps in some way. Thank you for your question.
Thank you so much. So next question by Jagdish. Sir, as I understand that love exists where there is a relationship, what is that understanding of relationship on spiritual platform?
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's really beautiful, Jagdish. I think what a spiritual relationship means can be different for different people. The first thing, I guess, that we begin when understanding or identifying a spiritual relationship is that people are relating to each other beyond the physicality and the emotionality of that relationship. In other words, they understand that there's something more to their identity. There's some deeper reason for their existence, and there's some deeper arrangement why we have both come together in this life. And I think when people have a vision of each other like that, as more than just a random physical person that they encountered, but they see that there's some deeper aspect beyond the physical and emotional, and there's a deeper reason why we came together. I think that begins to open up the idea of spirituality in that relationship. Of course, in many theological traditions of the world, the idea of spiritual relationship is also very much related to the concept that there is a supreme spirit, and that each of us as spiritual beings are connected with each other through our common connection with the Supreme Spirit. And therefore, a spiritual relation in that context will be seeing others as part of a bigger reality that I'm also part of. And so it can also mean that, and that we then go on to serve each other, to connect to the bigger reality that we're all part of. So I think for different personalities, spirituality and spiritual relationships can mean different things. But essentially these two things, the idea that number one, we're more than the body and that we come together for a deeper purpose. And number two, the idea that as spiritual beings, we're part of a bigger reality, and that we can grow towards that reality together, and at the same time fulfill our physical and emotional duties to each other. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Swamiji. The next question by Vinod Kumar. How do we focus on positivity of relationships?
Yeah, I think we need to first have relationships where we are getting a lot of positive energy. It's almost like our emotionality is like a bank balance. And the more inputs, the more deposits there are in our bank balance, then we become more empowered to then give and invest in others. And therefore, I don't think we all have an unlimited amount of positivity that we can give in a relationship. But I think the first step is to make sure that there are many nourishing relationships in one's life. And then when one encounters relationships in which they have to give more positivity, they become more equipped to do that. The second thing is, I think we can focus on positivity in a relationship when we see the potentiality of that relationship. When we don't see the potentiality and we're simply seeing the struggles of what we're going through now, then it's very difficult to be positive. But when one sees that there's something great that can be achieved, great that can be experienced, as one English writer says, it's not about obstacles are what you see when you lose sight of the goal. And so when we know that the goal is something beautiful and achievable, then we don't see the obstacles, and we're able to be more positive. The third thing I would say in terms of how to become more positive in relationships is always try to have a balanced view of the person. What tends to happen in relationships is that if someone does something wrong, it registers in our consciousness in a much deeper way than when they do something right. And therefore, it's recommended that in a relationship, when someone does something right, something well, something positive, that they should express it. Because we almost have this psychology that when good things happen, we don't register it as much. And therefore, we can be more positive in relationships when we see that relationship in a balanced way and we see the good things along with the challenges. So yeah, those are some thoughts. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Swamiji. Next question by Arpit. How to practice and motivate self for humanity love in today's materialistic world?
Yeah. I think we live in a world which is full of exploitation. We live in a world which is full of people who don't reciprocate and respond to us in appropriate ways. And therefore, I think often what can happen is we become very closed, we become very hard, we become very hurt, and therefore we protect ourselves, but we don't also open up ourselves to the potentiality of experiencing more. And I think this is one of the biggest problems in the world today, that many people have lost the hope that there can be love. Their heart has become closed to that. And therefore, I think we may not be able to open ourselves up to humanity. See if you can open up yourself in one relationship. See if you can open up yourself in one interaction. See if you can open up yourself in one vulnerable way. And from the love that's exchanged in that relationship, I think you grow and you expand your love to more and further beyond. But we can't give what we don't have. And therefore, we need to begin somewhere. Yes. Is that okay?
Thank you so much. I think we'll cover like two more questions. What is the role of hate and indifference in the context of love?
Yeah. Of course, hate and indifference are not emotions which support the development of love. But what I would say is that instead of hate, sometimes what we may experience in a loving relationship is correction, feedback. We may also have to experience some toughness in that love. So I think there is something to be said for that. That in love, sometimes there is also a need for correction, feedback. There is a need also sometimes for tough love, correction, and that's also an important ingredient. And I think indifference also is not a part of love. But what we may want to do is, rather than call it indifference, we say that sometimes part of love is also to step away, as I mentioned, give some breathing space, to also allow people to grow. Sometimes we can choke a relationship by constantly just trying to surround ourselves around that person, or just being too present. And there's also something to be said for just allowing some space. So yeah, I would say maybe hate and indifference are on an extreme scale, but perhaps some tough love and some time away can also support the development of love.
Thank you so much, Swamiji. The last question by Soumya. I think this is like partially you covered, but this is very specific. If a person has helped you just once, are you in debt to them for the whole life, even though they hurt you down the line many times? How should we go about such relationships?
Yeah, thank you so much. Gratitude is really, really important, to recognize that in every relationship we received something. And every relationship, most relationships in our life will be a mixed bag. So we receive some good things and we receive some negative things also. So what I would say, Soumya, is that yes, we should always recognize, even in the difficult relationships, I also received something, as they say. Even a broken clock tells the right time 2 times a day. And so even in those relationships, we received something. And therefore, the way we repay that gratitude is by acknowledging that and utilizing those gifts to go on and serve others. We may not go on and serve that person or again re-engage with that person, but if we take the gifts that we receive from them and use them to serve others, then we can say that that is also a form of gratitude. And that's also a way of repaying your debt to them, because you're using it in the service of others. So sometimes it's not always that we have to keep going back to someone who hurts us because something good came in that relationship, but rather we can take the good that came. And if we can't go back to that relationship to show our gratitude because it's not relevant, we can take those gifts to other relationships and use them and thank that person internally for what they taught us. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Swamiji. So yeah, so we are close to top of the hour. So yeah, I would really like to thank you and appreciate the time and effort that you took